Conversations with Elders, hosted by yours truly, Louis-Virie Blanche, welcoming you to Glastonbury Radio 432, where we will be TED Talking in tongues with the elders of all ages, all generations, all races, cultures, and creeds. All gender, religious, or political preferences will be honored and encouraged on Glastonbury Radio 432, Conversations with Elders, where it is our treasured pleasure to roll out the red carpet of golden liquid love light to you in honor of the Queendom Come, soul dancing free to life's heartbeat drum in honor of mother, daughter, sister, lover, priestess, goddess, friend, sharing the blessings of love's perfect stranger, Deja Vu, welcoming you to Glastonbury Radio 432.
It's too cosmic, much too cosmic for me. Much too cosmic.
Aloha, hola, aho, hello. Dr. Mohsen is here with us again.
Hi, how are you?
Hi-fi.
Bye.
So, we've been talking about indoor air quality, healthy living spaces, healthy buildings, and just to remind myself, when we spoke of the modern architectures tend to be focused on humidity and conduction.
Temperature, which is due to conduction, yes.
And it would be much better if we focused on radiation and convection.
Yes.
And explain a little bit how that affects the indoor air quality, because you were saying there's a relationship. Anytime there's a mechanical aid to the efficiency of a home, it's due to a failure in design.
Yes. See what happens if you look at when we talk about heat transfer, there's four ways that the heat can be transferred. One of them is by radiation. That's why if surface gets warm and it radiates inside, and if it's, let's say, summertime, absorbs the heat. And the other one is by flow of the air, which we can do, which is convection. So radiation and convection is determined by the design, which we call it passive solar design or passive building design. So those are determined by not mechanical system, but by architectural design. So a designer who is really aware of all this can design a building that does not need mechanical system, because mechanical system controls temperature and humidity. So now, when it comes to those two are connected to heat transfer by humidity and also by conduction. So architecturally, we are talking about radiation and convection. Mechanically, we are talking about temperature, conduction, and the humidity. Now, that's why in any given building, the mechanical system is the measure of the failure in architectural design to achieve the indoor comfort. Like, we noticed last time, we saw some of the charts that it is possible to create a building that indoor stays between 65 to 80 degrees.
So do we have to compensate for a lack of comfort?
Yes.
And the lack of comfort is inherent to the failure of design.
Yes. That's why mechanical system, the presence of mechanical system is the measure of failure in design.
And we went through smoking. There was number 6 was indoor air quality. I forget what followed smoking, but I think it was
number 5. Is indoor air quality after smoking, alcoholism, then highway fatality due to the car accidents and all that stuff, and then the homicide And then number 5, risk to public health is indoor air quality.
And we
And
spoke of a direct relation between the indoor air quality and productivity.
Exactly. We saw that, that the cost of maintenance, energy cost, and all that in a building is anywhere from $2 to $3 per square foot per year. Now, the cost of employee that people who work in the building is more than $200 to $300 per square foot per year. So that's almost 100 times more costlier if the employees are not productive. So that means 1 or 2% saving, 1 or 2% improvement in the quality of indoor that increases the productivity is more than all the energy costs and maintenance of the building. So that's why we looked at that. It's anywhere from 50 to 100 times more efficient, more economical to have indoor air quality than even energy conservation.
And we also spoke about a home you designed that had salt and water in the walls. There it is.
Well, these are the one with the walls, that we put, instead of insulation, we put salt. And then the one that and then again, to remember, it's a slide that I want to bring. I know it was here. Oh, here it is. And, there is a direct correlation between indoor air quality and productivity.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why, energy plus maintenance of a building per square foot cost is $2 to $3 per year. Hospitals are about maybe 4 more, and some spaces, but in general is about 2 to 3. Employee dollar and cost of the employee per square foot over the year is $200 to $300 per year. So personal cost is about 50 to 100 times more than energy and maintenance cost of the building. So that's where productivity is very essential to here.
And again, the lack of comfort has to be compensated mechanically if the building isn't designed properly, with the very choice of materials being considered based upon radiation and convection.
Right. But when that compensation has side effects, just like pharmaceutical has a lot of side effects, that was indoor air quality problem sources, over 50% of that is from HVAC.
From air conditioning causes over 50% of the indoor air quality problems.
That failure in design, in passive solar design, is very costly, and that failure is compensated by the mechanical system. So we pay very dearly for that failure in design.
So if a building has been built either in the extreme, not considering design, thinking in the old school modern architectural way, temperature and conduction, or even if it's designed by an architect thinking about radiation and convection,
yes,
the homeowner or the business owner can have plants in the building that would assist the air quality.
Right. This was early 1990, and NASA, which I think is one of the most commendable research they did, they become aware of this indoor air quality issue that Robert Kennedy, presented as a national ordinance. I had done the national ordinance of that earlier than that for City of San Jose, which was the first city to pass these laws. Now, what happens here? NASA had a very commendable project, and that was, they found that there are certain plants that can absorb certain toxin in the body, such as formaldehyde, benzene, carbon dioxide, and it goes on and on and on. So that could be a detailed description. Maybe we talk about it next time. But we can go over the list of some of these plants that NASA had recommended to be placed inside the house to absorb some of these chemicals and reduce the amount of that. Because these are, beside HVAC, we also have the material. The architecture has been very disrespectful to material they use, and it's called off-gassing. These materials have an extensive amount of chemical in production of those. The more material becomes more efficient, the more chemical they have used in it. So it's not natural material. It's not natural wood. It's pressed particle boards and this and that, which use a lot of formaldehyde. So then the next source of indoor air pollution after HVAC is the material we have used. And so that mostly comes from the inside material, such as the emission of carbon dioxide from sheetrock, furnitures, and all those other things that we use. They all have extensively amount of chemical. And then in the recent past 2 decades, we've had emission of ozone and other toxin from electronic devices, printers, and all that stuff. So that's why indoor air quality has become a very crucial source of pollution in our daily environment.
Well, let's go to the plants now and take a look at this list.
Okay, this list, again, we can discuss it in a more organized way next time, but
you said there was quite a number on the list, but right now we'll just go through 12 of them.
Yeah, these are these were the 12 primary. I think we already looked at the convection, radiation, and also comfort zone here. This was called Olgay chart, which was a very old chart in terms of comfort, is determined by radiation and airflow, not by humidity and temperature. And so how to design a building to create those and to create an environment which is centropical versus entropical, that's a whole issue of how to design a building. So then we already had seen some of these slides. And then, it comes to sometimes in the future, maybe we can talk about the design procedures and all that. So indoor air quality, 12 NASA recommended air purifying plants that you must have in your house. So start with number 1 is Areca palm. This like this, and that you see the picture of it.
And yes, then, the Areca palm.
And then number 2 is the snake plant. Also, it's referred to as snake plant. Is also called mother-in-law's tongue.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, each of these plants, there is a listing of the particular toxins that they're strongest with.
Yes, and then we go here, to money plants. This is another one, here, and after that, we go to Gerbera daisy. This is another number 4, and then we go to number 5 is see again, I apologize for the quality of these slides has to be modified for hopefully next time. And let me send this back. Yeah, the color has to change and all that so we can read it. So these are
Chinese evergreens.
Yeah, Chinese evergreen, and then this is very popular one. Number 6, the spider plant. It's very greatly absorbent. And then we have aloe vera. Aloe vera, besides that it has over hundreds of constituents for healing and wound and all that other stuff, the skins and all that, it's also a very good absorbent in terms of pollution and all that. The next one, number 8, is broad lady palm.
Now, would our listeners be able to go to a NASA site and look up the names of these plants to get
Yes, I would. What happens, if they go for a search for that, they should refer to NASA indoor air quality plants.
Okay, NASA
Then-
indoor air quality plants.
And then, yeah. So
So our ninth plant here is the red-edged Dracaena or
Yeah.
dragon tree.
dragon tree. So this is another one.
You know, most of these are very common.
Yeah. Well, this is the most, they put the most common because it's within people can really get it. I mean, there are other plants, but may not be available in every nursery.
Right.
Yeah.
Now the weeping fig.
Yeah.
I
And
think
then-
most of these are recognizable. The chrysanthemum.
Yeah. Yeah. So these are basically, that's what they try to narrow it down to 12. So they can probably, it's more available for people to get these things. And then number 12 is rubber plants, which
The
is very
rubber
common.
plant.
So that's very good. Again, these are good for formaldehyde, benzene, which is a volatile organic compound. Because
Poinsettia was one there.
which one?
Poinsettia was number 12.
Yeah, it's yeah. That's mostly, sometimes they use it at Christmas time.
Yes.
Yeah.
But you know, their poinsettias grow in trees.
Yeah. Well, these are basically bushes, or plants. They can just get a small plant that they have these, so you can.
Right, right. But
use
you know, I
some-
lived in an area in Mexico when the walkway to the house was lined, and I've never seen poinsettia trees that big or bushes that big.
Yeah, it's probably was a very humid place that they can grow pretty fast. Yeah,
Yes.
but again, a lot of these things, I would the way I would uh, have these to make it more intensive and more functional and more efficient or sufficient is I use it, with lime rock and biochar. And then the effect of these plants are going to be like at least 10 times higher.
Lime
Biochar.
and
Now,
biochar.
Now there's biochar, which is aerobic. That means, it was produced charcoal in the presence of oxygen. But if they can produce in an oxygen-starved environment, then it's much more effective.
Do me a favor, and the text that goes with each plant, how legible is that when you click on each one really
It's
quick?
not, I have to resend it to you. I'm going to fix that next week, and then, we can have it, because now there are a few other plants here too, like peace
Peach
lily.
lily. Mhm.
Yeah. So these are the, let me go to the next one. And then we have, I can't even read it, here. Let me see if I can change the color of this. And
Make it white. There you go. There's another name. That's the Latin name.
let's make this into a, yeah, you can, yeah, all of these, since it was transferred from old Harvard Graphic to PowerPoint, there's a little bit improvement needed. So that's another one. And these are additional plants.
English ivy, scarlet star, bramble.
Yeah, can you read it? Yeah, good. And then, English ivy. Yeah, so that's pretty common. And then we have
Boston fern, yeah. You know, I lived in a place in Jamaica called Fern Gully. The fern plants were 4 and 5 feet tall.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah,
Boston fern.
yeah. And then, the next one is corn plant. That's also very good, effective one. And Janet Craig,
Mm-hmm.
it's another one here. And then we have whipping fig.
So our listeners, they can go to their nursery and make a list of these plants, and by putting them in the various rooms in their homes.
Yeah. And hopefully next time I'm going to find out what room these are better. For example, there are certain plants here which is toxic. If they have babies, they don't want to put it in a baby's room. or child, young children. So
Right.
we have to really identify where are the best places to put these things.
Okay.
So, but
Well,
again, dandelion also, when it's, I had it here last time. The dandelion, if you notice, it's way up. Usually it's no more than 15, 16 inches, but 1 cup of soil, which had a few lime rock and oxygen starved biochar. You see how tall it got, and these are also really good.
it's about 7 feet tall.
Yeah, twice more than me.
You're not that short. You're 5'6", right? 5'6" or 5.
Yeah, 5'6", 5'7", something like that.
Yeah. But still, you're talking about a small cup of biochar with lime.
You see the cup at the bottom?
Mm-hmm.
It's a very small cup, and that's all the soil. This was put in. But the thing is, the best things are it's not just plants, but also, as we have talked uh, before, a few sessions before, all biological, cosmic, everything in creation have a magnetic function. That means cosmic or biomagnetic, not mechanical magnetism. So anytime the magnetism is more, the function is much more stronger. Whether if it's plants or whether human, all of human functions are magnetic. All of the plants' functions are magnetic. And since most of the things are going to magnetic starvation, therefore we have epidemic, we have plant diseases. So the bugs, they cannot deter the bugs, so they have to spray pesticide, herbicides, and all that stuff. It's because if the magnetism is strong, no bugs come around that plant. No microprogenies can survive in human body.
So the higher the magnetism, the higher the function.
So therefore, we want to create around the roots in the plants, we want to produce magnetism.
Now,
That's why,
Dr. Flanagan had a little brochure he published on magnetic form resonance.
yeah, that was what he was talking about. Mechanical magnetism is different than biological or cosmic magnetism. So therefore, for example, the person who really worked on biological and cosmic magnetism, his name was Dr. Philip Callahan.
Philip Callahan.
And then Davis, what's his name? Howard Davis, Howard Davis, I forgot his first middle name, who had a magnetic laboratory in Florida. These guys worked on biological magnetism. Now, biological and mechanical magnetism, they destroy each other. Mechanical destroys the biological. That's why EMF is very hazardous.
Now, are there any books by Dr. Philip Callahan that you could refer us to?
He worked on the issue. If they put his name on Amazon, you come up with a lot of books. And in terms of in the context of architecture, his work is very amazing because he came up with paramagnetic material and diamagnetic material. Such as, for example, lime is a paramagnetic material, and the granite is a diamagnetic material. Marble is paramagnetic, and then granite that they put in countertop is very diamagnetic. Paramagnetic means it allows the magnetism to come in. So because then human body harvests that magnetism, we have magnetic source in our building because magnetism was able to come in. So he has separated the materials to paramagnetic and diamagnetic material, which is a great work with respect to architecture.
So paramagnetic would lend a magnetism to other living sources.
Yeah, for example, if you look at adobe, when it's sun-dried, it's paramagnetic. When it's dried or cooked or in the oven, then it becomes diamagnetic.
Oh,
Just
really?
like just like when the fruits and vegetables or food, when we cook it, all of a sudden it doesn't have any nutritional value. But when it's
So
not,
when you're curing the adobe in an oven, it becomes diametric
yeah, it's got diamagnetic like brick. Brick has no thermal response.
and it will never restore itself.
Yeah. But adobe, on the other hand, sun-dried adobe has a lot of thermal response. That means it stores and gives and it selects, it
Hmm.
stores and gives, which is the principle of passive solar design, or passive architectural design.
Well, that's very interesting because, you know, the rammed earth home I lived in, I think I told you I had
Yeah.
it was 4 feet thick walls.
Let me just look here to give you a correct name of that. Let me see if I have it here. Uh, don't see it here, but yeah, I don't have it here, but I can give you his full name. The person who had the laboratory, magnetic laboratory. His famous book is probably, I mentioned it to you, it's Rainbow in Your Hand, Rainbow in the Hand.
Right.
And then Blueprint of Human Functions. That's another one. It's a good book. Yeah.
Blueprint of Human Function
Yeah.
and Rainbow in the Hand.
Yeah. And those are, I think, they're available in Amazon. Yeah.
So we've said before, everything in existence has a magnetic essence to it.
The source of existence is magnetism.
And
So
this,
yeah,
the Lyman biochar soil gives a small amount of soil a very,
yeah,
very increased magnetism.
yeah. It habilitates the magnetic function around the roots where we have to have magnetism.
So, you know, you're also in your designs, you say you always incorporate greenhouses.
Yeah, it's that means the home should be accommodating the very basic needs of the family, and that very basic needs is roof over the head, and then the other one is synergetic comfort, and then food. So these are food, synergy or energy, and shelter is the basic necessity of any family. So therefore, a home should accommodate that. That means it has to be a roof, of course, geometrically, and it has to have thermal comfort. That means, it has to have right material and architectural passive solar design. And it has to have a passive solar greenhouse to accommodate basic food necessity of a family. Now, when you produce the food in a greenhouse, then it has anything you get out of that greenhouse, it has all all the ingredients that we call missing link. For example, MSM, systemic enzyme, negative ion, all that stuff. There's a whole series of missing link in our food today. That's why we don't live fully to our maturity, which is 7 times 19, 133. So those cultures that they live with those principles, which is solar literature, which I wrote back in early 70, they live to be that maturity, like 120, 130.
Well, the practice of greenhouses supplying the food and the freshness of the food, you're saying that when we go to the market and buy foods, it's highly depleted of the negative ions.
Well, negative ion, MSM, systemic enzyme, and many others. But that's the whole 2-day workshop on missing link in our diet and missing link in our magnetic nutrients, because major nutrients that we have, the primary nutrients for human body, biological system, is magnetism, and we are deprived of that. So we are with the solid food, when it's been picked early, other than time that every food matures, every plant matures. It has, the minute we de-electrify it from the plant or disconnect it, negative ion, systemic enzyme, MSM, all of that within 24 hours or much more or less, it's gone.
Well, are there any unique ways if a home, people have homes already built and they don't have a greenhouse that was designed as a part of their living space?
Yes.
What are some of the options for using biochar? I mean, are window gardens or?
Yeah. Well, in early 80s, I had a grant from Department of Energy. So we went to the homes of low-income people or farmers in Utah, 3 counties in northern Utah. And we solarized it with a greenhouse. But instead of insulation and everything, we had a very massive walls. And then we had 55-gallon drums that we filled it up with Glover salt, a special solution that I had made. And it became the storage material for those greenhouses. And even, sometimes in Utah with wind chill factors and all that goes to -20, -30, -40, those greenhouses could survive. So this was anywhere from 1,200 to 2,000 square foot greenhouses that was producing food for the people who lived in there. So it's possible to do that, yeah.
So with pre-existing homes, would a number of people share a greenhouse, or you were giving them instructions as to how to have a greenhouse per family?
Per family, and as I said, the one that I did under the grant in early 80s, they were anywhere from 1,000 square foot to about 2,000 square foot. The 2,000 or 2,400 square foot was outside Begum City in Utah, which was for a farmer who could actually grow tomatoes and all that stuff in winter and sell it, because he wouldn't have any other income.
And 1,000 square foot greenhouse would produce quite a bit of food, would it not?
Yeah. I mean, when it comes, to 1,000 square foot, when you get intensified gardening and farming, then you can produce more. I mean, like from 1 bushel of potato, as I have shown here, from 1 bushel of potato, instead of 7 or 8 pounds, which is this bush here, we can produce 70 or 80 pounds.
So 7 or 8 pounds in normal soil, 70, 80 pounds of potatoes in the biochar.
Biochar, and also magnetically enhanced. The reason you see the tires, I use the tires here, is not the best material to use, but these tires, when the sun hits it, it gets very hot. And with magnetism and warmth, these things go very, very much. So this plant here that you see down here produces 7 pounds. You see how small it is? And this is the same plant, same one potato. All of a sudden you see it filled up all these tires with potatoes.
Well, I saw a commune in Arizona. It was called Wind Spirit. It was a place that had a lot of olive trees planted on the property, but there were several families living on the commune, but they had no community garden.
Yeah.
It was very odd because the stores like Trader Joe's gave food to this commune. Like the foods at Trader Joe's where the expiration date is coming due.
Yes.
They would give this community like maybe 2, 3 grocery carts full of food.
Yeah.
But it kept them from needing to think about having their own garden. They were being given food, but it was amazing to think that you had a group of people living outside of Tucson, Arizona, in the desert, and they had a beautiful area to grow a garden, but they didn't have a garden.
Yeah,
And
actually, yeah. No, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
it's kind of odd when you think people want to be self-sufficient and get off the grid and live, you know, a higher quality life, and yet they don't think about how important it is to have a garden.
You know what happened is, I have devices and equipment. Actually, I have given it a birthday present to my grandkids or other children because to just have fun with it. And if you want, I can go get a few pictures of it and bring it. It's called lemon clock or apple clock. Or
Yes, we've talked about those before.
yeah. So all we have to do is we put this in, and if it has energy, which is that negative ion, the flow of negative ion, this fruit can give me some energy or synergy in this case. Okay. So now after a while, this clock, after a few days, the clock dies. It doesn't tick. That means it doesn't have any. I'm a farmer. I cannot get food to you the minute I pick it up and put it on your table. So by the time I get it, pick it, pack it, and send it, even if it's organic and non-GMO, it'd be at least a week before you get it. And then if you put your clock, it won't tick.
Well, that, we end up needing to take supplements,
Right.
and we're spending extra to get organic fruits and vegetables that may have no real fortification in it.
Yeah. So therefore, there has to be a paradigm shift, that production by masses, not mass production.
Production by masses, not mass production. That's beautiful.
Yeah. Because, unless you don't want any negative ion, it's not something you can get it in a pill. It's like synergy. You cannot create it. You have positive ion in it, but never negative ion. Negative ion is life of the plant. When we disconnect it, but we are actually de-electrifying it. So that apple has like a battery, has a little charge in it. And if it stays not like a battery, the charge is dying, doesn't have any more charge. So how is it going to give it to me? So that's why my battery is always dead. You can't crank it.
Well, one of the first co-ops was in Berkeley, California. And they had labels on the fruits and vegetables. They'd say organic, and people would say, well, are you just putting a sign there saying it's organic? How do you know it's organic? And so then they went to signs that said organic as verified by the distributor, by the store, or by the grower.
Certified, yeah.
And, the grower, when it's interesting, when we take a nice big load of apples and we drive it on the freeway in California to get to the store, it sits in traffic. It gets pulled off the tree much sooner than necessary. And then it looks pretty good in the store when we buy it.
Yeah.
But our soils have really been depleted of the gold value. You said like the search for El Dorado wasn't a fabled city. You said the Spanish were looking for a certain kind of soil, right?
That soil, which was very magnetic. El Dorado in Spanish called Terra Preta.
Terra?
Preta.
Preta.
The spelling, I think, is Pretta. Terra Preta.
Terra Preta.
Which is the same as El Dorado. Yeah. So these Spaniards were looking for, they were smarter than scientists today.
Yes.
They were looking for that soil, which was the precious gold, Gold cannot give me longevity, but that soil can.
Well, there's some people that they're earth eaters. That some cultures have a tradition of eating soil.
Yeah.
Now, I've been told that in poor countries like Haiti, they do that not because of the nutrients, but because they don't have a lot to eat.
Yeah. Uh, it's been, I have read places, that sometimes, since if the soil is clean, it has nutrients, which is electrolytes, metals. Metals is the cause of electricity in the body. That's why they call it electrolytes, especially 5 of them. So that's why sometimes if a pregnant woman is deprived of minerals, sometimes they eat the soil. Sometimes a baby, unknowingly by some kind of intuitive consciousness, they eat the dirt.
So
But
it's something that the body needs it and sends a message, and you have a craving for it.
yeah, that's what called electrolytes. It's electricity. These metals, 5 metals, calcium, magnesium, potassium, iron, and sodium, they produce electricity and fills up uh, tiny little batteries, ATP or GTP, which is tiny little batteries outside the cells, in order to create energy for osmosis to put food in and toxin out, food in, toxin out. If I don't have it, then I don't have, my light bulbs are dimming. It's not really full blown. That's why pH is index of availability of these minerals. It's not electronic pH that we do, but it's actually the elemental pH. The presence of these elemental pH that produces electricity for function of a cell.
And you're saying elemental?
Elemental pH are the presence of those electrolytes.
Elemental pH.
But I can get a a glass of water and put a lot of ions in it. All of a sudden, the pH goes up. That's why I won't mention the name, but some of the people who make filters, water filters, they say pH of 9, pH of 10. But those pH of 10 and 9 is electronic pH. It's not elemental pH. So it doesn't really do any good. But if you measure it, that water filter that you buy, then it shows 9 and 10 pH. But that's ionic pH, not elemental pH.
Were these principles like you've gained a lot of work or inspiration from? Is it Avicenna or Avicenna?
Yeah, Avicenna. Avicenna, if this is all the medical books, it's still in Europe, and until mid 1800, it was all Avicennian, which is based on host theory. Pasteur came. Pasteur had an adversary by name of Beauchamp. Beauchamp was Avicennian, and therefore, he was host theory was Avicennian medicine, which was for since the 700 on, for 1200 years, it was all taught. I think 10 centuries, it was all taught, and in Europe, and then Beauchamp, adversary of Pasteur, was advocate of that in France, and same thing with Johannes Wolfgang Goethe and Steiner. Rudolf Steiner. These were all advocate of host theory of Avicenna. And all the medical books in Europe, I have all of them here, and they were all Avicennian medicine.
And what were some of the main principles of Avicennian medicine?
You have to have food that provides you electrolytes, elemental electrolytes. But the modern electronic and virtual science, it gives you ionic pH. That means, I sell you a water filter, and then what happens, I load ion on the particles of the water. And then, the pH shows up and it shows 9, 10. For example, there is something called total dissolved solid in the water, like a well water or tap water, which has anywhere from 2 to 400 TDS, total dissolved solid. And so I can load ion on each one of those particles, and then all of a sudden you see a high pH. Now, if you ever go to one of these shows and ask one of those people who sell these water distillers or water filters or water equipment, I won't mention any of their names, but ask them, can I use distilled water? They said, no, no, it has to be a tap water. Why? Because distilled water doesn't have any particles in it. And the vasopressin receptor of the cell was designed to have distilled water to go in and out. When there's particles around it, it gets too big, it cannot go in, it becomes cellular dehydration. So what happens, if you ask them, see, they load those particles which is attached to molecular water, and then, you see a high pH in it, but that water is useless.
And water of that nature, how would it affect our plants?
So the water, that you notice, for example, rain is highly ionic, especially if there's lightning. That's why all of a sudden you see any plant, goes 10, 12 inches with one rain.
So these understandings these indoor air quality enhancing plants that we just listed, you would want to have your water the highest quality water. Like Dr. Flanagan spoke about, the lower the surface tension of the water, the higher the purity.
Yeah. That was actually Dr. Flanagan worked with a man by the name of Kwando, Dr. I think Henry Kwando.
Wanda.
Kwando,
Mhm.
Honda, something like that. And he was also a NASA scientist, because Dr. Flanagan started working with NASA at a very early age. And so he was his boss, and he had about 60 years of worth of water research that passed all of them to Dr. Flanagan when he passed away. And then, they talked about Hansa water. Why is this Hansa water is so precious? Now, these water, they have negative ion.
High and negative ion.
Yes, that means synergy. Just like, my apple, when I de-electrify it from a tree, it has electricity in it. It turns the clock or light on. But after a while, it becomes like a battery that if you leave the battery for a while, it has no charge in it. That apple has no charge in it anymore. Now, the issue with the soil is a different issue because there's billions of microorganisms in the soil. Now, these microorganisms, they have a discharge called fulvic acid. Dr. Fraser, very great scientist in Oregon, I hope he's still alive. I think he's Robert Fraser. He was living actually 15, 20 miles away from my mother. I visited him all the time. He realized that when the soil does not have fulvic acid, it cannot break down these minerals in the soil so the plant can absorb it, because it has to break it into micron size. The roots can absorb it and put it in the apple. So
you need folic acid.
Fulvic acid, yeah. So that's why a lot of people who had toxic metallic toxicity in their body, I have recommended fulvic acid. And discharge of these, now discharge of organism, it dissolves the metals. Let's say I have iron in the soil into angstrom size, so the plant can absorb it and put it on, let's say, my fruit, or calcium in my fruit. So since I have sprayed my garden or my everything, the pesticide, herbicide, I have destroyed these microorganisms. So that's symbiotic, the marriage between plants, biology, and geology, because topsoil, residence of these microorganisms, is a marriage between biology, the plants, and geology, which is the soil. So that marriage has been broken. So therefore, there is no intermediate medium to take these minerals and put it in plants, because 85% of all agricultural land has been destroyed by pesticide, herbicide, and all that stuff. So therefore, our food does not have minerals. And if you look at Confucius 5,000 years ago, he mentioned about 5 elements that necessary. One was what? Fire or sun. Then it was what? Air. And then it was what? It was water. Sun, water, air, and then wood. Wood he referred to as earth,
Earth.
soil. Yeah.
Mhm.
But there was one most important one. If you look at some of the Confucians, this is 5,000 years old. It was metal as part of our nutrients. So those metals are minerals that produces electricity in our body.
Metals.
Metals. That's why 5 elements. One of the most important one is metal. Because all minerals are metals. They are not vitamins, Minerals are metals. Except two of them. One is sulfur, the other one is germanium. They are semi-metals. Yeah.
So in our closing today, we've spoken of these plants, these 12 recommended plants, air purifying plants,
Yes.
and people can get an understanding as to how lime and biochar can enhance the growth of plants. And we're understanding that quality of magnetism is key to our health, our homeostasis, is it not?
Yes. And if I may add one more item, this was the work of Dr. Daryl Langham in Iowa State University back in 50s, 60s, before he passed away. He did that in Venezuela to get rid of, there is one also geometrical, biometrical element, which is Geneso crystal.
The Geneso crystal, yes.
So those are some of the stuff, that can activate the health of the soil, because the health of the soil is the health of the human body. It's the health
But the
of the
Geneso crystal also can enhance an environment. There's one placement where that's really good for growing, right?
Yes.
And another placement of the Geneso crystal that's good for, how does that affect the positivity of an environment?
Well, because what happens in the Geneso crystal, if you look at from different angles, it's all project fractalating hearts.
Fractalated hearts.
Yeah, if you look at different angle of the Geneso crystal, you have one. If you have one, you look at a different angle, you see hearts. So now fractalating hearts in the universe, if you look at that star, it's IC 1805, the Milky Way.
Right.
It's when two Milky Ways come, a male and a female, when they fractalate between a female and a male, when they fractalate and nest within each other, it becomes the shape of a heart. So the fractalation and nestation and polarity in universe, it always produces a heart. So it brings us to the whole notion of architecture, the architecture of heart.
Architecture, the architecture of the heart.
Architecture, heart.
Heart.
Yeah.
Yes, architecture, not art, heart.
So architecture is what happens in fractalation of a male and female in polarity with no resistance in the universe. That's why you see the Milky Way of NGC 2207. It becomes something like IC 1805, and it's the shape of a heart.
Well, we have the eye of the heart. We've talked about the eye of the mind, the eye of the soul, eye of the body.
Yeah.
And the heart, you've done a lot of jewelry designs. You've taken the circle and you've replaced it with the heart, because the heart is found in nature.
Yeah. There is no circle in existential reality. It's just a virtual assumption and assumpness by man. Now, just take our Earth. It goes around itself. It becomes a spheroid. And when it really rotates around something else, it becomes ectroid. So there is no such a thing. That's why you notice everything is a male vortex or a female vortex. Male vortex is counterclockwise and female vortex is clockwise. So when these two come together like this, it becomes shape of the heart. It's very simple.
Well, in following the heart of nature, we live self-sufficiently.
Yes.
And we surrender in service to Creator and all creation by following. Those pattern recognitions are very important.
It becomes educainment for production by masses.
Educainment by production by masses, not mass production, but production by masses.
Yeah, not education of mass production, but educainment for production by masses.
Beautiful, beautiful.
So,
Well, once again, thank you again for taking the time to share with us.
So I have to really accept the shift. Otherwise, you know what I'm going to get.
The shaft.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. And thank you very much.
All right. Blessings, my brother.
Okay,
Well, that's it for here and now. But until we meet again, this has been Louis-Virie Blanche thanking you for listening to Conversations with Elders on Glastonbury Radio 432. Bless you.
Quantum physics in the kitchen sink, the energy that follows the thoughts you think. Quantum physics and the cosmic sea, laws of nature too heavy for me. It's too cosmic, much too cosmic for me.